My wife is a perfect woman, beautiful, elegant, cold in temperament, and a university lecturer, but she doesn't love me. She always said that the thing she regretted most in this life was marrying a nouveau riche like me. She wasn't wrong, I really am just a nouveau riche. Not very educated, but lucky. After hitting several booming opportunities at just the right time, I became like a pig that flew into the sky. After we got married, Sarah found fault with me in every possible way. She despised my lack of education, my rough manners. Even so, I never once thought about divorce. She's beautiful, highly educated, with a respectable career, the kind of intellectual woman I've always admired. And there's something else, though she appears aloof and untouchable. In bed she's soft, yielding, almost intoxicating. Once you've tasted that mix of conquest and contrast, it's hard to let go. I was completely hooked. I thought if I just endured it, life would go on. But in the 3rd year of our marriage, Diego appeared. Sarah quickly fell under the spell of his gentle, persistent charm. I thought our marriage would end in divorce, but what they wanted wasn't just divorce. They wanted my money and my life. 2 highly intelligent people joining forces against someone completely unprepared like me. It was almost effortless. I lost everything, and on top of that, I was buried under crushing debt. With nowhere left to turn, I climbed to the rooftop, filled with hatred, and jumped. I can't beat you, I admit it. But if heaven dares to give me one more chance, just wait. Chapter 1. I never expected my luck to be this outrageous. Heaven actually gave me another shot. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I first rode that perfect market wave, looking at the long string of zeros in my stock account. I burst into tears of excitement. Unbelievable. After everything I've been through, I, Christian, have come full circle, still an A-tier man at my peak. Narrowing my eyes, I calculated the timeline. There are still 3 years before I meet Sarah. That's more than enough. This time, I'll collect every debt they owe me, with interest. Once I made up my mind, I started drafting my revenge plan. Sarah looked down on me for being a crude, uneducated rich guy, didn't she? Heh, let's see this time how she gets played by the very same, uncultured man. I found a reliable overseas study agency and submitted my application. The person in charge glanced at my age and frowned. You're already 24. Isn't that a bit old? Silently, I took out my phone and showed him my bank balance. Still think it's old? He immediately bent over in flattery. Not at all. Not at all. I'll contact Stanford University right away. You can go straight into a master's program. It's just. Seeing him hesitate, I grew impatient. Just what? He gritted his teeth. You'll need to donate a laboratory to Stanford. It'll cost around $50 million. How much? My heart skipped a beat. I got nervous as hell. In USD. He smiled and shook his head. RMB. I let out a long breath. I'll donate too. Name one of them after your agency. His face bloomed like an old chrysanthemum in full glory. The next day, I boarded a flight to the United States. After landing, someone was already there to pick me up. He drove me to a luxury villa near the university. The villa had everything, fully furnished, ready to move in. I didn't waste any time. After dropping off my luggage, I went straight to the university to register. I put real thought into choosing my major. To have something in common with Sarah, I chose the same field as her, life sciences. School life was dull, but I didn't slack off. I attended every class on time, never missing a session. During lectures, I wore real-time translation earbuds and took notes seriously, to make discussions easier with professors and classmates. I waved my hand generously and got translation earbuds for all of them. They liked me, a lot. They liked my generosity. They liked my effort. And I truly was trying hard. Living a second life. I wanted to do things differently. I couldn't just live in hatred. I needed to enrich this previously shallow life of mine. As Jack Ma once said, riding the right wave can make even a pig fly. But when the wind stops, it's still those pigs that fall to their deaths. I didn't want to be that pig. Of course, I didn't become a boring, bookish student either. My life outside of class was still quite colorful. Chapter 2. The sunshine in California is great. The beaches are great. And the girls are great. The only downside, no proper beef noodle soup. Everything else is perfect. In my free time, I like to lie on the beach wearing sunglasses, soaking up the sun. Of course, I've kept myself in good shape too. In my previous life, although Sarah didn't love me, she didn't reject intimacy with me either. I figure if I had been one of those pot-bellied, greasy rich guys, she would never have let me touch her. The girls in California are very outgoing. Sometimes they'd even come up to me and start conversations. After I took out my phone and casually showed them my financial strength, they became even more enthusiastic. So just like that, during the day I studied life sciences. And at night, I also studied life sciences. After working hard for 3 years, I finally got my master's degree. On the day I returned to my country, I tearfully said goodbye to Jennifer, Brittany, Stewart, Hathaway, Taylor, Jenner. Supporting my aching back, I boarded the plane to B-City. Stepping onto familiar ground again, my emotions surged. Standing in front of a mirror at the B-City airport, I could see that the person reflected there had undergone a complete transformation compared to 3 years ago. A sharp American-style spiky haircut, gold-rimmed glasses, a refined and gentle demeanor, and a straight, confident posture. At a glance, anyone could tell I was now a cultured man. I was very satisfied with my new image. After resting at home for a few days, I went to B-City University. Sarah is a lecturer at this university. Judging by the timeline, her father's illness should be about to flare up. In my previous life, Sarah's father was diagnosed with lung cancer and wanted to go to the United States for treatment, but their family couldn't afford it. In the end, Sarah married me. The condition was that I would pay for all of her father's treatment and future expenses. Back then, I foolishly agreed. Not only did I pay for his treatment, I also bought her family a villa and luxury cars. I covered every aspect of their lives: food, clothing, housing, and transportation. All of that, just to earn a bit of respect from Sarah and her family. But in the end, they never treated me like a human being. Thinking about it now still makes me furious. Damn it, spending my money while constantly manipulating and belittling me. They even said things like Sarah marrying me was a blessing earned by my ancestors' good deeds. Looking back now, it feels more like her family hit the jackpot by getting me. Especially her father, that old man. The moment his condition improved even slightly, he started looking down on me and pushed Sarah to divorce me. It still pisses me off just thinking about it. When I arrived at B-City University, I directly handed in my recommendation letter for my advisor. After reading it, the principal asked about my undergraduate degree. I scratched my head. I hadn't even gone to college. Where was I supposed to get a first degree from? The principal immediately understood. He cleared his throat and said awkwardly, "Christian, our university places a lot of importance on undergraduate credentials when hiring faculty. Your situation is a bit difficult." Before he could finish, I immediately made my stance clear. "Principal, I understand. Isn't it just about donating a laboratory?" The principal smiled like a blooming old chrysanthemum. "Come to work tomorrow." Chapter 3. Early the next morning, when I walked into the faculty office in a sharp, well-tailored suit, the first person I saw was Sarah. This was the first time I had seen her since being reborn. Looking at that stunningly beautiful face, I felt a moment of daze. The department head began introducing me. "This is Christian, a master's graduate from Stanford, mentored by Professor Andre." He went on and on, while the other teachers listened attentively. I wore a gentle smile, quietly observing them, only occasionally letting my gaze sweep over Sarah. After the introduction, Sarah's eyes lit up. The coldness on her face softened noticeably. I sneered inwardly. No wonder in my previous life, not long after Diego returned to the country, she fell for him so quickly. So this is her type, but this time around, she and Diego won't get the chance. After the department head finished, I deliberately stared straight at Sarah, putting on a look as if I were completely captivated by her beauty. The other teachers in the office immediately started teasing. "Professor Christian has great taste. He picked our university's untouchable goddess at first sight." Sarah's face flushed instantly. I also lowered my head, pretending to feel embarrassed. Perfect. This was exactly what I wanted, to use their teasing to shorten the distance between us. Now I had a reason to approach her. As per tradition, a new teacher's first class is a public lecture. The audience consists of the department head and all faculty members. Officially, it's called Exchange and Learning. In reality, it's just a way to test your competence. I walked into the classroom calmly. Standing at the podium, I began speaking fluently. The topic I chose was gene therapy, the same research direction Sarah specializes in. Sarah listened very attentively. Her eyes grew brighter and brighter. She nodded at times, fell into thought at others, completely drawn into my rhythm. Soon, the class ended. The room erupted in enthusiastic applause. I felt deeply satisfied. This was the kind of recognition I had longed for in my previous life but never received. The hardships of the past 3 years had not been in vain. After the department head and the other teachers left, I lowered my head and pretended to organize my lecture notes, while secretly glancing at Sarah, who was hesitating nearby. Sure enough, after a moment, a cool yet slightly shy voice sounded beside me. "Hello, may I ask you a few questions?" I looked up and smiled at Sarah, whose cheeks were faintly flushed. "Ms. Tang, no need to be so formal. Just call me Christian." Sarah Tang hesitantly called out, "Christian," and I nodded. A faint smile appeared on her lips. Then she said, "Christian, you don't have to call me Ms. Tang either. Just call me Sarah." I pushed my luck a little further. "Then, can I call you Sorry?" Her face instantly turned completely red. I wasn't worried about scaring her off. After all, I had just come back from that wild place called America. Seeing Sarah lower her head and give a shy, quiet I nearly exploded with anger inside. In my previous life, that bastard Diego kept calling her sorry all the time. Yet I, her lawful husband, wasn't allowed to call her that. The one time I mustered the courage to do it, she scolded me for ages. You really are a piece of shit. Just as I thought. Anyone else could call her that casually. But I, the one who paid for everything, who gave everything, couldn't. Chapter 4. After breaking the ice, Sarah began asking questions. None of them were particularly difficult. I answered them with ease. On the way back to the office, walking side by side with her, I casually brushed my hand against her thigh as if by accident. Sarah blushed, but she didn't show any disgust, nor did she pull away. What she didn't know was, the more she reacted like this, the more I hated it. So her coldness and untouchable attitude had always been reserved just for me. Over the next few days, I started deliberately finding chances to talk to Sarah, creating a bit of subtle tension between us. She didn't reject it. On the contrary, she seemed to enjoy this ambiguous closeness, although she never agreed to go on a proper date or have dinner with me. Every lunchtime, we ended up sitting together in the cafeteria. I wasn't in a hurry. In a few days, her father's illness would flare up anyway. Sure enough, a few mornings later, when Sarah walked into the office, she looked distracted and unsettled. Her colleagues asked what was wrong, but she said nothing. I did the math, just like in my previous life. This was when old Tang collapsed and was sent to the hospital, where they discovered his lung cancer. I didn't expose it. Instead, I continued maintaining that same push and pull ambiguity with her. But during our interactions, Sarah began asking me about medical conditions in the United States. Her family wasn't well off. If they stayed in the country for treatment, they might manage for a while, but going abroad, that would be completely unaffordable. Several times, Sarah seemed like she wanted to say something, but the words never made it out. She swallowed them back down. I knew she wanted to borrow money from me, but she didn't want to ruin the perfect image she had in my eyes. I played along, watching the situation like a spectator. Let's see how long she can hold it in. It wouldn't be long before her parents started pressuring her to marry a wealthy man. In my previous life, Sarah didn't have a boyfriend, nor did she have anyone in her heart, so there wasn't much pressure. She simply married me. But this time was different. She already had feelings for me. Soon enough, the day arrived. One evening after work, I asked Sarah out for dinner. She hesitated for a long time, then shook her head with reddened eyes, picked up her bag, and left without saying a word. I followed her quietly from behind. After leaving the campus, she walked into a Western restaurant. At a window seat, Sarah sat across from a pot-bellied man. He looked at least 40. As he stared at her, his small eyes nearly disappeared from smiling, his face full of sleazy desire. No need to guess, this was clearly the blind date her family had arranged. After chatting for a while, the men began getting handsy. Sarah dodged left and right, her face full of resistance. The men grew impatient and pointed at her, saying something harsh. Sarah's expression became darker and darker. His voice was loud enough that people in the restaurant began looking over. Finally, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her glass of water and splashed it onto his face. Enraged, the men lunged at her with a ferocious expression. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. In one swift motion, I rushed into the restaurant, just as the men raised his hand and Sarah closed her eyes in resignation. I shouted, "Stop!" With a flying kick, I sent the men crashing backward. His scream jolted Sarah awake. She opened her eyes and saw me standing in front of her. I pulled her into my arms with a domineering force, my voice laced with reproach. "Why didn't you tell me if something was wrong?" Buried in my chest, Sarah broke down, crying uncontrollably. Chapter 5. After leaving the restaurant with Sarah, we returned to the office. Only then did she come back to her senses, sobbing as she explained what had happened. It was pretty much exactly what I expected. Her family believed treatment abroad would be more effective, so they were pressuring her to marry a wealthy man. After finishing, Sarah looked at me with hope in her eyes. "Christian, can you marry me?" I put on a troubled expression. "Sorry. I don't have that kind of money either." Her face instantly went pale, her eyes dimming as if covered in ash. "Christian, I'm sorry. I really love you, but I can't just ignore my father. Please, forget about me." With that, she turned and ran outside. I quickly caught up and grabbed her, my face filled with pain. Sarah gently touched my face, her expression full of heartache. "Christian, don't be like this. I don't blame you. Maybe we're just not meant to be. Don't worry, I won't let that man cause trouble for you." Damn, even I was almost moved by that. Holding her hand, I asked, "Sorry, are you really going to marry that old man?" She looked at me with determination in her eyes. The next moment, she stepped forward and kissed me. The kiss was long. At first, I passively accepted it, quickly realizing she didn't know how to kiss. I took control, guiding her. Only when her body went weak and she pushed me away did I stop. Sarah was breathing heavily, her head lowered, too shy to look at me. Her voice trembled with tears. "Christian, forget me." Then she turned and ran off. I held back the urge to laugh and shouted after her, "Sorry, don't go." Watching her disappearing figure, I smacked my lips slightly, savoring the moment. Damn, in my previous life, I never even kissed her. This time, taking her first kiss, hardly too much, right? Honestly, I could have already won her over by now, but it wasn't the right time yet. I was waiting for the moment when she would completely fall for me, so deeply that she'd be willing to stand against the whole world for my sake, and that moment should be coming very soon. Chapter 6. The next day at work. When Sarah saw me, she lowered her head and quickly walked away. I wasn't surprised by her reaction. In fact, Sarah is the type who falls hard in love. Once she loves someone, she gives it everything she has. In my previous life, after she fell for Diego, she obeyed him completely. When it came to taking all my assets, she wasn't just aware of it, she actively participated. If it weren't for the way she and Diego worked together, inside and out, I wouldn't have died so quickly, or so miserably. So this time, I'm going to make that love-obsessed side of her fall for me, completely, irreversibly. I'll make her love me so much that she'd be willing to stand against the entire world. All morning, Sarah deliberately avoided me. I didn't approach her either. By noon, she, who had already gotten used to eating lunch with me, kept glancing in my direction, intentionally or not, but I didn't go to the cafeteria. I walked straight out of the campus. Sarah stood there for a long time, watching. In the end, she sighed and walked into the cafeteria alone. Looking dejected, I ignored it, enjoyed a nice meal outside, and deliberately dragged my time. Only around the end of the workday did I slowly head back toward the university. Sure enough, as I approached the school gate, I saw a BMW parked there. That middle-aged man from yesterday, the one built like a walking gas tank, was pulling at Sarah. She was clearly unwilling, yet had no way out. I quickened my pace and ran toward the gate. By the time I reached them, I deliberately acted out of breath. Then, under Sarah's shocked gaze, I shouted at the man, "Let go of my girlfriend." Sarah's face instantly turned red. The students and teachers nearby were immediately drawn to the scene. Sarah rushed to me, pleading in a low voice, "Christian, please don't make a scene." The gas tank glanced at me with disdain. "Kid, I let you go yesterday for Sarah's sake. Now you're looking for trouble again." Looking at his flashy gold chain, gold watch, and gaudy outfit, I almost laughed. "Old man, you should be thanking me. If you married Sarah, in a few years you wouldn't even know how you died. But a performance has to be complete." I put on a stubborn expression and stared at him. "I'm warning you, stay away from my girlfriend." The gas tank's hand, holding a cigarette, trembled slightly. "Your girlfriend? Heh. I paid a bride price of $3 million to marry her. Can you afford that?" Instantly, murmurs spread through the crowd. Exorbitant bride prices were already unpopular. And on top of that, Sarah and this man were clearly mismatched. To everyone watching, it looked obvious. Sarah was in it for the money. Amid the whispers, Sarah lowered her head more and more. I pulled her behind me protectively. "What do you people know? Sari's father has cancer and needs treatment overseas. That's why she's doing this. She's being forced into it." Sarah threw herself into my arms, quietly sobbing. I gently wiped away her tears. The gas tank looked like he was about to explode. "Kid, let go. She's my fiancée now." I took off my backpack and slammed it hard onto the ground. $3 million, is it? I've got that too. Chapter 7. Seeing the backpack stuffed full of cash, the onlookers were stunned. Sarah was equally shocked. "Christian, where did you get so much money?" I gently stroked her hair. "Silly girl, after what you told me yesterday, I sold the house my parents had prepared for my future marriage." Sarah hugged me tightly, crying uncontrollably. The gas tank glanced at the money on the ground, visibly relieved, then got into his car and drove off. Clearly, even $3 million was a burden for him. He just used this chance to slip away. When we returned to Sarah's home, her parents' eyes lit up at the sight of the $3 million. Sarah looked at them, her gaze filled with both relief and disappointment. "Mom, Dad, I'm going to be with Christian." Her parents didn't even look at her. While counting the money, they nodded repeatedly. Sure. Seeing their behavior, Sarah was completely disheartened. She grabbed my hand. "Christian, let's go." I nodded. I took her back to the staff dormitory. As a returnee, the university had assigned me a single room. Sitting on the bed with Sarah, I looked full of guilt. "Sorry." "I'm sorry. You'll have to suffer being with me." Before I could finish, Sarah kissed me, stopping me from speaking further. Her eyes were soft and full of emotion as she whispered in my ear, "Christian, I'm yours." I had waited more than 3 years for this moment. As expected, it felt completely different with Sarah. In this life, her heart belonged entirely to me. Things she had never done before, she now willingly accepted. By the time morning came, as I looked at Sarah sleeping beside me, I let out a cold laugh. Sarah, in my previous life, I treated you like a treasure. But you treated me like dirt. This time, don't blame me for turning the tables. Sarah moved into my dorm. Despite the modest conditions, she never complained. Every day after work, she bought groceries and cooked. She kept the place spotless. She even hand-washed my underwear and socks every day. At night, she devoted herself completely to me. Honestly, my experience this time was even better than in my previous life. Half a year passed in this sweet routine. I did the math. 3 million should be almost gone by now. In my previous life, I had spent enormous amounts of money, countless 3 millions, to get old Tang the best hospitals and the best doctors. That was the only reason he survived. But this time, without my support, how long could 3 million last? They had seriously underestimated the cost of living in the United States. That day, when I returned to the dorm, Sarah was sitting on the bed, lost in thought. I put down my bag and sat beside her. Sorry, what's wrong? Her eyes were red. My husband, my mom called. They said they're out of money. I closed my eyes, pretending to be in pain. It's all my fault for being useless. Maybe I should start driving a ride-hailing car. Sarah shook her head desperately. No, you don't owe them anything. Inside, I was pleased. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. Between her parents and me, she had chosen me. That meant she was already hopelessly in love with me. I continued acting distressed. Sorry, even though we're not married, I've long treated them as my own parents. Sarah stayed silent for a long time, then clenched her teeth. I'll sell the house. I immediately refused. No, where will you live after that? Her expression turned resolute. I've paid back everything I owe them. This is the last thing I can do for them. Then she leaned into my arms. My husband. I'll have nowhere to go after this. You won't abandon me, right? I nodded firmly. Chapter 8. The house was sold quickly. Property in B City is still quite valuable. Even though it wasn't in the city center and not very large, it still sold for over 3 million. Sarah only transferred half of it to her parents and gave the remaining half to me. Husband, you keep this money. Let's save a bit more, and later we can pay a down payment. We'll definitely build a good life. I nodded repeatedly. Living in the dorm every day, she didn't mind, but I was getting fed up. After all, I'm an A-tier man, and you expect me to live in a dorm. A couple of days later, I took Sarah to a villa in B City. She looked around the place curiously. Husband, is this the house your friend asked you to manage? I nodded. This house belongs to a classmate from Stanford. He settled in the US, so he asked me to look after it. We can stay here temporarily. He's not in a hurry to sell it anyway. Sarah was overjoyed and threw her arms around me. Peaceful days passed for another half year. Then Sarah's parents called again, still asking for money. Her mother said that after the surgery, her father hadn't recovered well. His condition had worsened again, and he needed a second operation. I almost laughed. In my previous life, I had hired the best specialists for his surgery, and he had been taking the best targeted medication afterward. He was doing so well he even had the energy to break up my marriage with Sarah. This time, without me, he was probably nearing the end. Sarah's voice was cold. Stop calling. I don't have any money. Her mother immediately exploded. No money? What about the remaining 1.7 million from selling the house? Sarah let out a soft laugh. My husband and I need to live too. We need to buy a house. Her mother shouted angrily. You're not even married. What husband? You two aren't even a family yet. Sarah remained calm. My husband said we don't have the financial foundation yet. We'll get married in a few years. She paused slightly, then added. If you hadn't forced him to pay that 3 million bride price, we would have already been married. At that point, her mother completely lost control, cursing her as an unfilial daughter, a love-obsessed fool. Amid the shouting, Sarah silently hung up. Her stance was clear. She would no longer care about her parents' fate. I couldn't help but click my tongue. When someone like her falls in love, they're ruthless. Once they choose someone, they can abandon anyone else. A few days later, news came from abroad. Sarah's father is dead because of unpaid medical bills. Her mother has been banned from leaving the country. With a clean and ruthless finishing blow, her mother has ended up wandering the streets. Sarah didn't even show up. She directly donated her father's body. I felt a surge of satisfaction. In a place where no one could hear me, I shouted 3 times. So satisfying, so satisfying, so satisfying. It felt even better than if I had killed them myself. Being betrayed and stabbed in the back by your own daughter, does it hurt? Does it feel worse than death? You two old fools, you had it coming. Now there's only Diego left. In half a year, he'll be back. As for whether he'll hook up with Sarah again, I'm not worried at all. How could a dog resist when it sees shit? And in this life, nourished by love, Sarah has become even more radiant and alluring than in the previous life. Chapter 9. after her father's death and her mother's disappearance. Sarah became even more dependent on me. Every day, she devoted herself to taking care of me. At night, she would curl up in my arms, holding me tightly. It was the kind of behavior that comes from a lack of support, a lack of security. During this time, Sarah had subtly brought up the idea of marriage more than once, but I rejected her every time, using the excuse that we didn't have a solid financial foundation yet. Now she had become humble. After being rejected, she never mentioned it again. Sometimes, I did feel a bit sorry for her. After all, I'm human. If you keep trampling on someone long enough, emotions are bound to develop. But every time I thought about how, in my previous life, she and her lover had driven me to my death, I would curse myself inwardly. Christian, don't go soft. Remember what she did to you. And just like that, any trace of sympathy would vanish. Half a year passed in relative peace. One morning, the department head walked into the office with a young man. Sorry to interrupt, everyone. Let me introduce someone. This is our new teacher, Diego. Let's welcome him. Looking at the handsome, sunny young man, I was secretly delighted. So, he finally showed up. Diego's gaze swept across the room as he began his introduction. Also a returnee, his resume was even more impressive than mine had been. After all, he was a genuine high IQ elite. After finishing his introduction, he walked straight toward Sarah, confidently. Under everyone's surprised gaze, he extended his hand. Hello, beautiful. I'm Diego. My heart skipped a beat. Damn, don't tell me this guy was reborn too. Sarah kept a cold face, not even sparing him a glance. Diego stood there awkwardly with his hand extended, his expression shifting between embarrassment and irritation. The other teachers in the office struggled to hold back their laughter. The department head stepped in to smooth things over. Diego, you're new here, so you don't know the situation. Our Ms. Tang has a very close relationship with Christian. Other than him, she keeps her distance from all men, even me, the department head. He made a joke, and amid the laughter, helped Diego save face. Diego then turned his attention to me. After all, in the office, only Sarah and I looked like a matching pair. He walked up to me and politely extended his hand. I didn't catch your name. I stood up and replied with a smile. Christian. There was no surprise in Diego's eyes, only a hint of provocation. Looks like I overthought it. He's not a reborn one. After the introductions, it was time to prepare for the public lecture. During the lecture, Diego paced back and forth on the podium, his gaze repeatedly drifting towards Sarah. His content was flashy and showy, clearly an attempt to display his knowledge. Unfortunately for him, Sarah sat beside me, head lowered, not even giving him a single glance. Unable to bear being ignored, Diego deliberately left a question open. Ms. Tang, could you answer this question? Sarah raised her head, her gaze cold. Without any courtesy, she replied. Am I your student? That completely shut Diego down. Even the department head noticed Diego's intentions towards Sarah and immediately looked displeased. Diego, just focus on teaching. Don't try to show off all the time. For someone usually so easygoing, the department head's tone was unusually harsh. Diego didn't dare act up again and finish the lecture properly. After class, Sarah and I returned home. The moment we stepped inside, my expression darkened. Sarah didn't know why, but her body visibly trembled. You know that Diego? She immediately waved her hands. No, I don't know him, I swear. I narrowed my eyes and let out a cold laugh. Then why did he come straight to you the moment he arrived, acting like you two were familiar? Sarah looked so wronged she was on the verge of tears. This really was a disaster out of nowhere for her. She didn't understand either why Diego was staring at her like some obsessed fool. Seeing her like that, I didn't push further. My goal was simple, to plant a seed of hatred in her heart, to make her believe that anything Diego did would only make me unhappy. Chapter 10. Diego played his part well. After arriving, he kept finding excuses to approach Sarah. Every time he tried to strike up a conversation with her, Sarah would instinctively glance at me. I pretended not to notice, letting him continue to harass her. But every night after we got home, I would find different ways to pressure Sarah. In front of me, she became more and more submissive, and the way she looked at Diego grew colder, more hostile. Once the seed of hatred is planted, everything Diego did only helped it take root and grow faster. This kind of harassment and pressure went on for half a year, until finally, it exploded. That morning, I deliberately didn't show up at the office. Seeing I wasn't there, Diego grew much bolder. He forcefully dragged Sarah into the emergency stairwell. Coincidentally, I was one floor below them. Diego grabbed Sarah tightly by the shoulders and shouted, Sarah, I like you. You and Christian aren't even married, why can't you give me a chance to pursue you? Sarah struggled non-stop, shouting at him to let go, but Diego seemed to have lost his mind. I won't. Sarah, what do I lack compared to Christian? Sarah, I truly love you. If you say yes, I'll definitely make you happy. You know my publications in top journals far exceed his, my future will be much brighter than his. I clicked my tongue. Compared to someone like me who rose halfway through life, he was more accomplished, but love has never been about who's better. Still, it was obvious, Diego was also the type to lose himself in love. Damn, in my previous life, I really died unjustly, taken down by two people blinded by love. Sarah didn't waver at all. She directly issued a cold warning. Diego, if you dare harass me again, I guarantee you'll regret it. But Diego was already too far gone to care. He pinned Sarah against the wall, trying to force himself on her. I rushed upstairs immediately, just in time to see Diego attempting to force a kiss on Sarah. At the same moment, my shout rang out, along with Diego's scream. What are you doing? Meanwhile, Diego clutched himself, collapsing to his knees in pain. When Sarah saw me, panic flashed across her face. Husband, it's not what you think. I let out a cold snort and turned to leave. After returning home, I packed my things and moved into the guest room. No matter how much Sarah begged, I refused to open the door. I slept soundly through the night. The next morning, when I opened the door, I saw Sarah kneeling outside. After half a year of pressure and conditioning, she was no longer mentally stable. Seeing me come out, she looked up, her eyes bloodshot. Husband, believe me, he didn't kiss me. My expression remained cold as I walked past her toward the bathroom. She followed closely behind me, watching her legs struggle to move. I knew she had been kneeling there all night. Looks like it's time to close the net. I stared at her harshly. Sarah, I'm not blind. I saw him kiss you. If I hadn't shown up, would the two of you have gone even further? With a thud, Sarah dropped to her knees again, her whole body trembling. Not daring to say a word, I continued pressing her. Sarah, I can't follow you around all day. How do I know whether, when I'm teaching, the two of you haven't already gotten together? Sarah stayed silent for a long time, then slowly, painfully got to her feet. Husband, I'll prove it to you. With that, she walked out the door. I got dressed and followed behind her. Sarah walked absent-mindedly into a supermarket. A moment later, she came out, holding a black plastic bag. Then, carrying that bag, she headed straight toward the university. Chapter 11. It was the weekend. She couldn't possibly be going to class. That meant she was going to see Diego. Diego was currently living in my single dorm room. Sure enough, Sarah entered the dorm building and skillfully took out a key. The door opened. When Diego saw Sarah, he was shocked. But today, Sarah seemed different. She smiled brightly at him. Diego, do you really love me? Diego nodded eagerly. Sarah walked over and sat beside him. But how can I believe that you truly love me? As she spoke, she placed her hand on him. Diego, who hadn't even gotten out of bed yet, was instantly energized. Sarah, just tell me what to do. I'll listen to anything you say. Sarah smiled seductively. She took out a rope and tied Diego's hands and feet to the bed. So that's why she had gone to the supermarket. She bought rope. Diego cooperated fully. After all, he had studied abroad and seen plenty of things. Once she finished tying him up, Diego was already impatient. Sarah, come on, get on here. Sarah smiled and pressed a finger against his lips. Then she pulled out a wad of something, stuffed it into his mouth, and used rope to bind it shut. Suddenly, I thought of the American movie Basic Instinct, and I finally understood what Sarah was about to do. The next second, Sarah took out a knife. In Diego's terrified gaze, she directly cut off his 2 eggs and 1 cucumber. Diego struggled violently, but his mouth was blocked, so he could only make faint muffled sounds. Sarah took out a plastic bag in disgust and packed the cucumber and the eggs inside. Then she covered Diego's face with a pillow, calmly walked out of the dorm, and locked the door. I knew Sarah had gone insane. After doing all this, there wasn't a trace of fear on her face. I hesitated over whether I should save Diego's life. Dying like that was too easy for him. But then I thought again, he had already become a eunuch of the 21st century. Even if he lived, what use would that be? When Sarah returned home, she had a bright smile on her face. Husband, you can rest assured now. He'll never come bother us again. A chill ran through me. I smiled at Sarah and gently held her in my arms. She was startled. I hadn't been this gentle with her for a long time. Very quickly, she became immersed in that tenderness. That day, I had her 7 times. Afterward, in the calm that followed, I looked at Sarah sleeping on the bed. I picked up the phone and called the police. The next time I saw Sarah was before the trial. I hired the best lawyer for her and arranged a psychiatric evaluation. In the end, I was still soft-hearted. After being together for so long, how could there be no feelings at all? Finally, Sarah was sentenced to life imprisonment. As the trial ended, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. Husband, you can't get married. You have to wait for me to come out. I nodded firmly. Don't worry, Sorry, I'll wait for you, no matter how long. Sarah smiled happily. After everything was settled, I quit my job and began to enjoy life. After revenge, what remained was endless emptiness. I decided to let go of hatred. I was satisfied with Sarah's ending. Sarah's mother had disappeared, but I didn't care anymore. Letting them go was also letting myself go. Living well on my own, that was better than anything else.